So, hey, thanks for chatting with me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Love to do it.
So we actually chatted a while back. It was in 2019, and you were on Broadway and getting ready to end the run of your show, A Band's Visit.
Right, right. That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which was a wonderful show, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun to do.
Yeah. And now you're in Armageddon time.
Yeah.
Man, what a great freaking cast and director.
Oh, how about this? I mean, James Gray, first of all, James Gray is a dream to work with. It was such a great experience on all levels. And yes, a great cast. Anthony Hopkins, Anne Hathaway, Jeremy Strong. I'd never heard of them, but I hear they're very good. No, they're great. They're amazing.
Your character was or is a real person.
Yes, I play in the movie. I play Mr. Turkletown, and it sounds like a made-up name, but it's not. Actually was a real guy. He was a teacher in a public school in around 1980, and he taught like 42 sixth grade kids all by himself with no assistant, no, and he taught every subject. And he was a real person, and I did a little research. I saw in the script that it takes place, a lot of the movie and what I had to do takes place in PS 173 in Queens. And I have a very dear friend, Amy Ryan, who's a good friend of mine, who I know went to school in Queens. So I just called her out of the just off chance. I said, listen, in the script it says PS 173. Is there any chance you went to this school? She said, yeah, that's my school. And I went, okay, uh, this is really a shot in the dark, but did you happen to have a teacher named Mr. Turkletown? She said, yeah, that was my teacher. And then she sent me a picture of her with a lot of children and Mr. Turkletaub standing there with a tie all put together and looking a little tense. And so I sort of, that's amazing. I did a little deeper dive and sort of asked a lot of questions of her and who she knew that knew him, and it really helped me, sort of because he's a real person, sort of understand him and sort of mesh him with what I was sort of seeing with the role, you know.
I would imagine, like playing somebody real, it gives you a certain sense of responsibility to get things right.
Uh, yes and no. I mean, yes, I wanted to honor that he was a real person, but I had a lot conversations with James Gray about it, and he was less interested in me like doing some kind of imitation of him, and more interested in sort of the general feeling of him and what he had written about him, which is in my mind was a person sort of up to here and ready to retire, but doing the best he could in a really tough situation where you're being asked to teach 42 kids. Integration is just newly happening in that school, and you're having to deal with that. And just I empathize with him trying to do as best he possibly could in that situation, which isn't very good. It turns out.
When you when you start doing your research to prepare to play this guy, do you do anything differently your preparation because he's like a real person? You know what I mean? Is there anything you did that you otherwise
Ah,
wouldn't do?
well, like I said, I did my research. I asked the questions. I found out what I could find out about him, and I was, it's based on James Gray's life. This movie, and I had the best resource available, which was James Gray himself. And I would ask him questions, and that really was a great part of my preparation. One of the things he said was because a lot of crazy things happen in this movie, and you're really trying to get behind the situation. Like, I remember asking him, seriously, did this happen? He's like, this happened to me. Okay, this isn't made up. He's like, this is my life. So to have that resource right there was invaluable. It was a kind of a touchstone for if you were kind of in the world of this guy and how he saw this guy who was a real person.
Did you go back to think of like any teachers you had when you were a kid? I mean,
Oh yeah, totally. I thought of a teacher I had, and I kind of brought a little bit of being a parent of young kids. I have a 12-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son, and so there's something about being a parent that I brought to this. There's a sort of, as much as I love my kids, there's a kind of a quality of sitting on your last nerve sometimes that I was able to really easily access somehow, like opening an envelope for this role. And yeah, and also I remember a teacher I had uh, back in 6th grade. His name was Mr. Laidlaw, and we actually really liked Mr. Laidlaw. But I really he was a little bit of a touchstone for me because he was famous in our school for throwing erasers at the kids and like really hard and hitting us, which we all thought was horrible, but really secretly thought was really cool. And I think back about him now and reading that and working on the Armageddon time, and I think he was probably in a similar situation than Mr. Turkletown was just having to teach science to this huge group of kids from every socioeconomic, walk of life, and somehow trying to maintain discipline. And I don't know how they did it, but I have a newfound respect for Mr. Laidlaw, and I kind of used them a little bit.
I have a 5 and 3-year-old 5 and 3-year-old both daughters, and I know that last nerve you're talking about. I know it
the
completely.
nerve. So it doesn't mean you don't love them. I love them, but there was I really did talk to the kids in a way, the way I talk to my kids, which is you're just like, hey, don't. I'm really trying my best here, but don't push me.
And you did work with a pair of talented kids. Like being a father, did that sort of help you out in any way to kind of maybe relate to them as an authority figure?
Absolutely. And first of all, those kids, Jalen and Banks, are absolutely brilliant young actors. They were unbelievable professionals, and they also had to deal with something quite hard, and so did we. But yes, I did. I did feel like they were my kids by the end of the shoot. They were very similar to my kids. We would joke around, and also I would get annoyed with them, and actually sometimes I had to keep discipline on the set, not just with them, but with the other 40 kids.
Mm-hmm. Are there actually 42 kids there?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Kids. That's all. People are like, wow, you're in a movie with Anthony Hopkins and Anne Hathaway, Jeremy Strong. What's that like? I'm like, well, I spent a month with 42 kids. Is what happened. I'm sure working with Anthony Hopkins is great. I just didn't do it this time, although we are in the same movie.
Being a father of 2 kids, what do your kids think about dad, like his job?
It's not a big subject of their concern what I do. I mean, my son is, he kind of is looking at me like, oh, that's cool, and when I was on Broadway, they'd come visit all the time and bomb around the set, and that was fun. It's a really good question. I actually don't know 100% the answer. I know they see that I am gone for periods of time doing what I love, and I hope that is the message that comes through. But they're pretty much concerned with themselves. You have 2 kids. You know
right.
What I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
They get bored really quickly when you start talking about your own thing.
Yeah. Oh, I know that. Yeah, I know that boredom. Yeah.
Right now, my daughter's doing her first play.
Oh, nice.
And she could. I'm like, if you need any help, she's like, I don't want your help. I'm fine. I'm like, but I do kind of do this. She's like, I don't care. So
get me an apple.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're here for me.
Yeah. You kind of mentioned this a little bit, but how was it working with James Gray?
A dream. a dream in every sense of the word. I never worked with anybody who gave me personally so much freedom and I felt so trusted. Excuse me, I went swimming and I did a runny nose. And never felt so trusted by anybody, and so he had that talent to make me feel like trusted, and he's clearly a genius behind the camera. So I noticed, he'd come to the day, and then he would see what we were doing, and he would change shots right there and create absolutely new shots that weren't planned, sort of based on what we were doing, and because he had such technical grasp of his craft, and so it was those two things combined. It was just magical working with him. He would. I remember there was a time, the very first, early on in the rehearsal, where in shooting, when I asked if I could change a line, just one word, and he said, "Say what you want. I don't care." He's like, "I know the writer." And I did. I was able to be loose and follow my instincts, and he seemed really happy with that. And we did it a million different ways, and it was delightful. Really, he makes you a better actor, clearly.
Nice.
And he's always sort of pushing for what is the truth, not what is facile, what is a funny line. He was really always pushing all of us for, let's just, if we can get to the truth here, then I'm happy, which was really great.
I want to ask you about your audition. Was this like in person or like a self-tape?
Oh, it's all self-tape. Yeah, I did a self-tape. And like I said, I don't know, it was because I was mad at my kids that day, but something just opened up, and I just had a really good self-tape, I have to say, just because I very easily was able to relate to the character. And I felt like I wasn't even acting. I felt like I was just being him. So I'm glad that it was jiving with how James Gray saw it too.
So I want to ask you, like, how do you like self-tapes now, this way of doing things?
Well, there's a lot of things to recommend about it. Uh, you have a lot of control over what you're doing, and I think we're all sort of learning about this new thing as we go along. But I do like that. I don't miss having to be in a waiting room with a bunch of other, nervous actors and all the neuroses that comes with that. But I do miss, you know, I think there's a danger in sort of living in your own bubble when you're self-taping, where you're just sort of acting for yourself and looking at yourself acting, and it's a little disconnected from other people. So I do miss the contact, with other people. But in general, I enjoy it. I enjoy it. I feel quite relaxed in front of the camera now at home, and it's better than the other thing, actually.
Now, are you the kind of person who wants to do it like a million times, or are you like a perfectionist?
No, I've learned that, for me anyway, that's not productive. I do a lot of preparation, an enormous amount of preparation for each self tape. But when I tape, um, for me, I only do one or two takes
Wow.
usually,
Mhm.
and I know pretty much what feels right. My experience is that the more takes you do, if you try to get it perfect, it ends up kind of sucking the life out of it. And for me, and and also I'm trying to resist. I think there's an urge to try to make a little perfect little short film when you're self taping,
Mhm.
and I also think that I've stopped doing that, because I think it's an audition. I think it should look like an audition. You should be seen, you should be heard, but it should be alive. And hopefully that is working for me. I think it is.
I think it is,
You know,
yeah.
I mean, just I actually don't do a lot of taping. Yeah, that's what I've learned works for me. But a lot of preparation beforehand. Actually, I've read something about Anthony Hopkins where he said something similar. He really, when you see this movie, he's so loose and he's so grounded and present. I think he's phenomenal. And he says he does a lot of preparation before he can get to that point, which I found really interesting.
Mhm.
I think that there's something to that. Yeah.
I'm an actor too, and what you said about like how it's doing more than two sucks the life out of it, and that just was like that when you said that was like, holy crap, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've had experience on certain sets of television where they certain productions love to shoot the hell out of um, their show. Like they'll do it from every angle. They'll do 4 different kinds of close-ups. They'll do all this coverage, and so you're doing a scene for like 13 hours, and by the end of the day, you don't know what you're saying. You're just there's no. It's really a challenge to try to keep that fresh, and I think it's a bit of a microcosm of that experience. Self-taping, just it can really if you try to making it perfect because there's no perfect. I don't think. Even when you mess up your words, I don't think it matters as much as being present and bringing life and something actually occurring in the scene. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm at with that.
Just my final question is, what any chance you're gonna do anything on stage soon?
Wow, I would love to. It's been so much film, TV stuff, but nothing really is in the works. Just movies and that I've done are coming out, and yeah, no, not at the moment.
And plus, with
You know,
that, you got to strike while the iron's hot. Keep on going.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I love the work I'm doing now, but and also, the band's visit really set the bar pretty high for an experience on the stage. That
Right.
was uh, so great and so you know, it was basically one of my first musicals ever, and I was on Broadway, and it didn't feel like, you know, it felt like doing a play when you would sing every once in a while.
Hmm.
So I would love to do something again soon
Yeah.
if it's right.
Well, hey, thank you again so much for taking the time. Wonderful to chat with you, and maybe another 5 years. We'll do it again. Whatever 2019 is.
No, not so long.